Hey, this is Nathan Young, founder and author of How to Be Second. And this is 1 Second, a conversation between two people with wildly different identities, reacting raw to questions from people like you, and exploring how we are different while embracing that we're better together. In our vernacular at How to Be Second, I am a second, and my co host, Aramondo Davison, is a natural one I see. So, as usual, I'm going to get right into it. First question: what makes you uncomfortable? No further context.
Man, let's just go super broad with it, huh? Oh man, uncomfortable. I'm trying to think about the last time where I truly felt uncomfortable and why I felt like it was important. Even though I told this story, right, it was super uncomfortable for me to essentially surrender all my possessions, right? But I want to go deeper than that. The discomfort in that actually wasn't not having, it was more having to rely on other people to serve me or support me. I don't fear risking it all and either going to the moon or diving into the ocean and touching the bottom of the sea and then having to start over. Like that actually doesn't scare me.
Hmm.
What's challenging, what makes me uncomfortable is having to look at myself in the mirror and be like, Mondo, you're super capable of doing a lot of things. But God said in this season, you have to rely on other people. You have to ask Nathan for help. You have to ask your spouse for help. You have to ask your daughter for help. Like what happened in that season for me was me actually like recognizing or integrating what it's like for someone who doesn't have the privileges that I have had in my life.
Mm.
And now I have this awareness of like, yo, I remember how hard it was for me to go ask this person for something when I didn't have it. And so if someone now does that to me, I have a different level of empathy because I'm like, it took a lot for you to come here and ask this question, right? Like you had to surrender your ego. You had to qualify every other variable first to make sure you didn't have to come ask this person. And so to answer your question simply, my biggest uncomfortable season was the last few years having to rely on other people for whatever God's plan was.
Mm. That speaks to me in a way that I don't think that it has to do with my identity so much as my personality, if that makes sense. But I'm a very acts of service focused person. Something that strikes me about what you just said is like that would trigger my acts of service like in a really strong way. Like asking other people for help is very much like a, but doing things for you is how I show you that I care about you.
I think even, every morning I wake up and open up the Bible app, and this morning the message was something about just being a generous giver and like the beauty in life is giving and not receiving. And so kind of the juxtaposition ish of like that season was the only thing that I had to give others was my time.
Mm.
And so like to your point, I'm used to giving others whatever it is, but one to be in an environment where I have to ask other people to like eat,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
but then also go out in the world and be in service to others still, knowing that I don't have anything, right? However, like I will say that The Chosen did a good job of highlighting it in a season where Jesus was like, okay, I'm going to send my disciples out 2 by 2 and don't bring anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't bring bag, money, staff, don't bring anything. Just go serve. If somebody welcomes you into their home, be there, bless them. If they don't, cool, go on to the next home. And so like that was kind of etched in my brain a little bit because I felt like I was following God's plan. So I felt like God gave me a motto like, hey, this is the 2022, 2023, 2024 version of that, where like you just have to go out. And when somebody says, hey, Mondo, can you help me with a thing? Or can you show up because I feel uneasy? Or, hey, my anxiety is high. Do you have some kind words for me? Despite my circumstances, to be able to show up for that person and give my time, I felt like was my call to action. And so all that to say, man, like last 3 years were super uncomfortable, but in ways that just stretched me in a direction that was super foreign. Cause like I lived a middle class privileged life my entire life.
I have lots of different directions that I want to take that. And I also am feeling how uncomfortable my own reaction is to the question. So maybe I'm deflecting a little bit. But so like, let me ask you also, like, as you were navigating in professional spaces and as you're looking again at doing that, right? Like, of going, okay, I'm pushing into this section of life again, throwing it back. I mean, you were navigating tech spaces, you were navigating startup energy, like founder spaces, a lot of funding spaces, nonprofit and government spaces. You were dealing with like large sums of money that were flowing to and from a lot of different people. And so in those spaces also, because it's a very different, potentially a very different feeling, what are the things that made you, because just even explaining the stuff that you were like kind of at home doing would make someone like me really uncomfortable potentially just
Yeah.
hearing that was how the structure of your life was. And so what about being in that space at that time made you uncomfortable? What's the work that you had to do in that time that you were like, oh, this is the work that makes me uncomfortable?
You're asking, you were in all these spaces, so now removed from it, like was there like some very like nuanced work that I had to do that made me uncomfortable? Are you asking that? Or are you asking the reverse way? Sorry.
No, just like what in all of those spaces, was it asking to be in the room? Was it when you were in the room and you needed to ask for stuff, right? You needed to ask for funding, you needed to pitch a story. Was it the actual building of the story in the first place that you needed to go and then do, like try to get in the room or whatever, like in all of what you were doing? And then after that, and this is some of my own reaction, like I'm clearly laying on the table how I think. And so I'm like, I plotted the dominoes in my head. Then you had to like fulfill the work, assuming that you actually got a promise, and you did get a lot of promises, right? And so what in all that made you go, oh,
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you know how I'll just call him a young whippersnapper. Like, you know how a young whippersnapper enters any story that we're familiar with and they want to go 100 miles an hour. And the old wise guy or gal is like, pause, buddy, slow your roll. But that person just has so much passion and conviction for how they want things to go. And often, and this was me, often they don't see outside their scope to even understand the value of moving at a slower pace. And so when I was in all the spaces, I consistently yelled out loud, you're not moving fast enough and you're not being bold enough. And people with more dollars would hear it, but they wouldn't move faster or go bolder.
yeah,
And so like I was always extremely frustrated. One of the things that I learned, and I don't know if this is how they saw the world or if this is just a way for God to have shown me like more of the story. What I learned was God is unfolding a story and you're either on God's plan or you're not. You're either supporting God's plan or you're not. And so Mondo, even though you thought you were supporting my plan, I've been here forever, meaning God. So like, I can play this tortoise game. I don't have to sprint to anything. So Mondo, what I need you to recognize is as this story unfolds, it's not even about the thing for you. It's about the humans. Kind of goes to the last episode when I was like, oh, I see now my life is 22-minute sitcoms.
yeah,
Because whoever is in front of me, God is just like pour into that person so they can be in better service of the story. Mondo, I sent you Nathan because Nathan cares about the thing. He cares about the people too, but like his gifts is putting together the thing. So while he's focused on the thing, you focus on the people in your own unique way. And so honestly, like my biggest takeaway of all this and like walking through that discomfort is being slow and focusing on the human and helping other humans become the healthiest version of themselves, helping them heal in ways they have been avoiding, meaning hard conversations with their wife or husband, meaning spending more time with their children, meaning sharing some uncomfortable truths that they have hidden from others and themselves for the majority of their lives. Like I'm going to push humans to go there because once they release that ick, they then have a different type of clarity. And then the train can move faster, but it's being weighed down by all that ick because people are carrying so many different things in their backpack. So that's a lot of ways of me saying I sat in so much discomfort and had to face all these dark corners of myself that were extremely hard. But now I can be well, I've been trying to be the good guy the entire story. And if I had this level of darkness, I imagine some other people have their own too. And if they're afraid to say it out loud, continue to build trust until they get to the point to where they're willing to say it out loud too. And then you two can face it together, or you can help them to face it. And so I felt like I was rambling a little bit, but yeah, that's what I got on that, man. But I'm super curious because there definitely must be, because there always is, some type of difference of what makes me uncomfortable versus what makes you uncomfortable. And so what does that juxtaposition look or sound like today?
I have two things that are just screaming at me that have been sort of that way the whole time. The first one is actually something you just pointed out, and that is the self, really. Right? It comes down to what I've uncovered with hard work. The thing that makes me really deeply uncomfortable is not knowing. And that translates into a professional sense all over the place. And I do a lot of work to be very certain. And I really struggle to just have some comfort in clarity. And we've talked about this before, the idea of that way. And that's very clear. We're going that way. But I want to know all of the details. The interesting thing about wanting to know all the details for me personally is that what makes me uncomfortable is not the not knowing. It is the not doing good, doing well, doing great, right? It's okay, well, the only way I can know that I performed adequately is if I know all of the details that I'm supposed to hit. And so in fear, when I am moving in fear, when I'm incredibly uncomfortable, I pull the thread for more and more and more decisions to get made along the way before I'm willing to move. And it means that I carry that in front of audiences when I'm putting materials together. And it really creates a weird dynamic where I end up knowing, I end up being a 13 on a scale of 10 about the thing I'm talking about. And the audience wants to hear about 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I'm way too informed, fully have lost the plot on what is important to the actual person listening to me, because I forgot that the point was clarity and my audience forever ago because of how afraid I was of not showing up with every single answer, every I dotted, every T crossed, because I'm terrified of that.
Man, this is super interesting for many reasons, right? And so a few minutes ago, you paused I could take this a lot of directions. And so here's my moment where I'm I could take this a lot of directions. But the thing that is hitting me the most right now that I'm curious about is actually more social emotional. And so when I hear you say hey, we're going that way, and you need to pull every thread, one, the old Nathan versus Nathan now, or maybe this person has been consistent. How does anxiety play in that? It sounds like that could manifest into this overwhelming unease given how you approach certain tasks. So is there any way you can speak to that? I don't have a specific question, but it seems like that's paramount right now.
What rises up in me for sure, the closer I get to fear, the more that I can feel. If I wake up in the morning at 5:30, right, with anxiety sitting in my stomach, the thing that I'm hunting for is the idea that there is something known already somewhere else that I don't have. And that the answers already exist, everyone else knows, and I'm the only one in the dark. Here's an example of that from a story. I used to speak in front of this undergraduate business class in a town that I lived in, Valparaiso. The Joe Trendowski is the professor who consistently had me in to speak to his class. Joe is awesome. I remember one time I was doing a Q&A and we were just talking about business stuff, right? So this is like an entrepreneurial focused undergrad class. And one person asked me about what I thought about Amazon. At the time, this was over a decade ago. At the time, Amazon had like zero profit, zero whatever. And that was their strategy. But I wasn't whatever point in my life I was at, I parroted back. They basically were like, what do you think about this company and how are they doing? And my response was like, they're not making a profit. They're not like, they're gigantic, but all indexes point towards this is not nearly as impressive as anyone else might think. And that was my response. And I sometimes have that play back in my head as being like, I am the dumbest human being. like, like that's one of those like wake you up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat and be like, I can't believe. And that the perception that I might do that again someday leaves me paralyzed sometimes. So that is the deep anxiety that like jumps up out at me and sometimes paralyzes me. I've started referring to this as like, don't park in the roundabout. For anyone unfamiliar with a roundabout, the idea is it's all yield signs. There's no stop sign. There are no turns, right? You just yield when you're going to die and you go if you think you can survive. And that's it. That's the rules is don't stop. The rules of the roundabout are don't stop, pick a way and go. And if you can't pick, you can just go around the circle again. And so you can just keep doing that forever if you really wanted to. But the whole idea of what I'm saying is that my anxiety is I must pick the right exit. And that is very certain. There are two rules of a roundabout and in general on the road. And those are do not park in the roundabout, which I want to do because I want to stop until I know. But you can't. You have to just keep going. And the other rule of the general in driving that we've learned from Google Maps is there are a nearly infinite number of ways to get to a place.
Facts.
So even if you choose the wrong, quote unquote, if you choose one of the exits to the roundabout, you're almost definitely not going to be wrong. You might just add a little delay or whatever, right? There's almost always another option. But I definitely have been a person who their deep anxiety wants them to park in the roundabout until I am absolutely certain. And I would say the evolution of me over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years, yes, but especially over the last 5 years, is to crave more and more clarity and to care so much less about certainty because I'm like, look, the turtle always gets there. But what the turtle did is never stop.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm with that.
Like the rabbit kept going super fast, sure, but it kept going super fast and then stopping and super fast and then stopping. And I'm like, the turtle never stops. So that idea of like, maybe you go a little slower, maybe you go around the roundabout once or twice. Actually, all of that is fine. What you cannot do is park in the roundabout. You cannot wait to be certain. You must not stop. And so I think that actually is driving a lot of people around me crazy. Because I think that's a very secondness type thing, is to want that certainty. Yep.
Let me ask a question then, and this might be too general, if it is, consolidated a little bit. But is there a best practice, or is this a yes and answer, where then the second and the first in command, how does the communication style work? Is it, hey, second, can you put together all the pieces of the puzzle until you have clarity? Then you give me the clarity and then I make the uncertain choice? Or do you like reach for the first to like have certainty once you give them more pieces of the puzzle? I guess I'm trying to figure out like, is there a healthy recipe where it's just like, hey, this could work. But now I guess as I'm saying it out loud, it might be whatever works for you two works for you two. All right, I was thinking out loud.
No. It's a great thought. And I think in this case, we are the model, right? So the way that you and I seem to work fairly well is that I have become a healthier person by looking at you and you go, here's an idea. And I go, good enough. And we just like, and then I'm like, don't stop. Right. Then I get to a certain point and I ask you, do you need anything else? And I make sure that that certain point for me is way less than what I need. It's working for you and I, and it has worked for you and I before. And I think the most important part of that, what you said right at the end, and that is that may not work in every first and second in command relationship. And that is why the relationship is so critically important, even over and above professional skills. Because sometimes the first in command may have incredible amounts of competence. They don't actually, some first in commands have like no skill gaps, but what they have is zero competence. And so they just show up to every single thing completely ready to go, perfect story, all the stuff. And they are like frozen, right? They parked in the roundabout. They're frozen in fear. So they're clear, but they're stuck. And what they need is a person, the second in command, the second that would unlock that pair is someone who's going to show up and just be like, you're amazing. You're awesome. You're so good. The world so needs this. Like, that's what's going to drive them forward. That's all that that pair needs. The second in that situation might need zero professional skill whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
I
that's
think it's
really
relationship
good.
based. That's my answer.
No, that's super dope. That when I just think about the different type of person or people that can sit in that duo role, right? Like how equipped they are skill wise or confident wise, or the dreamer versus the doer. Like there's just so many different remixes that could come together. That's super dope. So as we kind of think about like discomfort, I feel like that kind of runs parallel to tolerance, because you know me, like I'm like, hey, Nathan, let's go risk it all every day. And I feel like one of the things that you have helped me with over the years was the guy who says no. And so I remember early on, you were like, all right, Mondo, yeah, send me an idea. Okay, send me another. Send me 10 of them. I'm going to say no to 8 of the 10. I'm going to put them in a repository. Like I'm not devaluing them, but they're not right now ideas. And then the top 2 we'll sit and play with. And so I'm just curious, like, how does tolerance play a role in your life? One, maybe even as like a husband or a dad. And then 2, how does tolerance play in your life as a second in command in a business?
You mean like risk tolerance?
Yeah, I am thinking risk tolerance.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, yeah, you're good. You said it earlier. Okay, you mean risk tolerance, just making sure. So first of all, I think I've actually asked this sort of in the second in command community and the seconds community writ large. And that is, we've sort of said that seconds by and large are really actually not very risk tolerant in general. And that's not just a personality thing. That's like an at our core identity thing. So I think some of us are more risky than others, but on a scale of 10, I think the riskiest of us actually stop right around like a 6. Like I would put myself in the fairly risky, risk tolerant category, and I'm in the like that 5-ish range. Because you just said, even in your like leading up to it, you were like, I'm ready to go to the moon or down to the ocean, or like, and then if it doesn't work, be left with nothing. And like, that's fine. And that is terrifying. I'm like, no, like full pause. Wait, what you just described was I am willing to sink all of my money into buying lottery tickets if I feel so led. And that feels like a totally justifiable idea. And I'm like, so you would invest all your money like into Bitcoin, and somebody would be like, well, yeah, dude, that seems like a very stable investment right now. And I'm like, no.
Oh man.
And so
it's so funny just because like earlier you talked about the things, the string that you pull, right, to get to 13 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's me for risk tolerance. Like I'm 13, 14, 15, I'm 100 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, yo, well, let's do the thing. And so this is so funny how the juxtaposition is working out.
I would pose that that's part of the reason. I think that's a superpower to some degree, right? So not having that crazy risk tolerance actually saves us from a lot of catastrophe. And I think the risk intolerance of seconds naturally, I think we have this natural superpower of being like, hey, if you do that thing, these 10 dominoes are about to happen and 8 of those are bad. And no one knows when they don't die, right? Like an example, because we're talking about being at the bottom of the sea, it's one thing to like try to go to the bottom of the ocean, be left with nothing. But we just had, what was it called? Ocean Gate, literally, like the name of the thing.
Yeah.
Like they all died. So this is not a get left with nothing. This is, they are all gone. And what that tells me is there were a bunch of people who had such insane risk tolerance that they all went, it's worth it. What?
Facts. Super facts.
Just the idea of it made me go, not a fucking chance. Right. And so, but what I will say is, I was right. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear, I told you so. And it's a crappy thing to say, but also, like, no way, dude. And right? I couldn't say that I knew, but I think a bunch of seconds. There were no seconds on that crew. You know what I mean? Like no seconds died in the situation of Ocean Gate. I can't say that 100% for certain, but just like our concept of risk tolerance just does not go to where your risk tolerance goes. So for me in a relationship, I feel like I'm very risk tolerant, but what I actually feel like I'm a 10 out of 10 change tolerance. I'm incredibly change tolerant.
That's awesome.
I'm willing to take any idea, like you said, I'm willing to take your 10 ideas and, like I'll put 8 in a repository. We'll focus on the 2. We'll adjust that. I'm willing to pull any trigger. I'm willing to go down any roundabout choice. I'm incredibly change tolerant. I'll move. We navigate our relationship differently, whatever. But what I am not is risk tolerant. I'm not going to take out a second mortgage to fund a business idea. I am not. And the idea of that to me is like dumb. Why would you do that? That is clearly not a good idea. And at the same time, on some level, like, I don't know, I've earned a lot of money and done a lot of good work for people who had enough risk tolerance to have taken out that second mortgage on their house to fund their business idea. And they have made a lot of money doing so. I would submit that my risk tolerance has kept me a little bit less wealthy. I'll throw it back over to you, but I guess I don't know if I answer your question, but that's just my reaction to this idea. And so for risk tolerance for you, would you add anything on top of that?
Yeah, I would say that for me, and you know me, like I just love story so much. And I've just always wanted to like experience a dope story where if somebody goes back and reads it, they're like, yo, that was a really good story. And if I never take the risk, then like I don't see how the story could be a really good story. And so again, I kind of keep going back to like this alignment with Christ because like I used to always be on superhero type stories, right? And most of them, it's just like the villain captures a superhero and then they're all tied up and there's some type of ticking time bomb. But when it gets to 3, 2, and then all of a sudden somebody bursts in and they're saved, right? And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like that story was etched into my being that like no matter what, before the clock strikes 0, somebody's going to hop in and save us, right? Or save me or whatever. What ended up happening when I leaned into Christ's story was his story is an example of getting past 0. He's on the cross, dead, and then dead for 3 days before he is resurrected. And so I'm like, well, that story is even doper than all the other superhero stories because he got past a certain mark that no other superhero had gotten past. And so, again, I always want to say out loud, like, yo, God, no need for me to die. Like, I don't need that, you know? However, I will do my best to be as faithful as possible to not fear it in advance, right? And so there's just something about me getting in alignment with Christ, like, oh yeah, like if there's nowhere else to go, like go up. And if up ain't there, like just be still, because eventually like something will step in and change the story. So I don't know, man, my risk tolerance is boundless because I believe God knows my heart and knows like I am doing my best to be the person in the story who has the most faith to continue to walk in a straight line despite the fear. So
There's so much of what you're saying that I'm like, this is the definition of why we are better together. Because neither of us is wrong, and two things can be true, and stuff can be two things, right? That's tough. But one of the things we're good at as humans, or we can become good at, is holding two seemingly opposing truths in tension at the same time. You have this boundless risk tolerance, and that clearly works. And I don't understand the scale whereby you could measure your risk tolerance, because I can't perceive, like, it's so risky to me, it's beyond my perception. And I am also often right, if you will. Prevention is an incredible cure, right? Like, the amount of good that people being risk intolerant have done in the world is incalculable. We have prevented nuclear war. We have, we've prevented war. We've prevented famine. We've prevented disease, which is only known when there is war and famine and disease. Then it's like, why didn't someone prevent this? And it's like, well, I mean, apparently the risky people got out ahead of us this time. And so like both of these things are true. I'm incredibly validated in like 8 of those ideas are not for right now. And also we needed 10. And we've talked about this before, like a tidy room needs nothing. But Legos all over the floor are a place where creativity can happen, but there's cleanliness that can happen, which supports the creativity. And so like you and I are both correct, but I will get parked in the roundabout or not even have a direction to be going without you. And you might die at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, for real.
Without somebody like me. And so like this better together, or even like I said, you might have all of the competence necessary and just be stuck right outside, right off stage, doubting yourself in that moment and being like, I can see the future, but I just can't trust that I'm the person to get it there. And you just need the person to come along and be like, I'm pretty risk averse and you got this.
Yo, man, you're so spot on. Like, as you were telling this story, like, here's what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning, like, opening this door, and it's like an endless abyss of black, like a black hole, right? And you're like, Mondo, I have this light, this anti-black hole light, and I'm going to strap it to your chest. And then you're like, I haven't got it to work yet, though. But I promise you, while you're in there, I'm going to get it to work. And I'm like, all right, bet. Yeah. Like my risk tolerance, one, is high enough to like go do the brave thing. But also my trust in the second in command who God sent to somehow put together this light that nobody else could put together to see in the black hole. Like he's definitely going to deliver this value through you. And so like part of my risk tolerance with you and other people in my life is my goal, my assignment in the story is to be the Ethan Hunt. Right? Like, dude ain't creating anything. He's just out in the field. But Benji and and Luther and whoever else is on the squad, like they're so competent in their craft that Ethan is like, somehow they're gonna figure it out. And so, to your point, better together. When all the pieces are in the right seat, everybody's going to do exactly what they're supposed to do, and it's just going to crystallize. So like, I'm excited.
Here's the very last thought that I have, which is maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but I can't help it. And that is sometimes it doesn't work. And I think that might actually be part of the point that you're making, or at least that's part of what I'm picking up, is that some piece of me hears you and is terrified because I'm like, so then if Ethan Hunt dies, it's Luther's fault. Like Luther didn't do his job well enough, good enough. He didn't know enough. Like, how can you possibly prepare? And Ethan has supreme confidence in this story, just like you have supreme confidence. But what I'm feeling very strongly, and so confirm this or deny it, but it is not, you have 100% confidence that it is going to work. And also, if it doesn't, you wouldn't blame me. You would be like, that's the story then. Like,
Yeah, there's an extreme version to answer this and like a less extreme. And so like, let's talk about both of them. So like, because we both like Ted Lasso, it's like we can go and implement our strategic approach, but it might not work that first year.
yeah,
And we get downgraded to an organization that is not as pristine as where we started. But again, to the point that like it's not necessarily about the outcome that we're perceiving. It's like we got to help heal these unhealthy humans so we can get to the top of the top of the top. And so like I really like Ted Lasso because it does a good job of showing like, oh, these two are good together. They have to take a dip and then like work their way up all the way from the bottom. On the like super extreme side of it, right? If we go to like Mission Impossible type, my belief has to be that even if I run out of breath, somehow, some way, God's going to send an angel and I'm going to be delivered somehow. Like, I just have to believe that. And if not, well, then, look, God teleported me to heaven and now I'm doing something up there dope. But like, yo, all in all, the story that is left behind is going to be the dopest story. So somebody else is just like, oh, well, now let me step in because I'm called to trust Nathan in this squad, right? Like Cadence is just like, yo, my dad taught me my whole life, like to just trust in others. And so now it's just her time to like step up and like take the baton. And so anyways, man, I feel like today was such a dope episode because to your point, two things can be true. And you sitting in your truth and owning who you are and not saying, Mondo, you have to be less risky, or me saying, Nathan, you need to be more risky, and us looking at each other like, yo, we're perfect balance, and somehow, some way, God's going to make it work together. I just think that's fire.
I will honor exactly where it is and say yes to that and end it right there for the day.
Dope.
It's Nathan again. If you made it to the end, that's awesome. I have a couple ways you can go deeper if you're interested. If you resonated with the way that Nathan talked about himself and how he sees the world, Nathan is me, you might be what we call a second, which is an identity, not a role. We have a couple ways to dig into that curiosity. You can take our Am I a Second assessment on our website or howtobesecond.com/assessment. You can grab the book, How to Be Second, from our website or Amazon or almost anywhere you like to buy books, including on audio. If you resonated with Mondo, or you'd like to resonate that way, but you're feeling stuck, you can find Mondo on LinkedIn by searching for Aramondo. That's Aramondo. Mondo deploys his natural one-eye-seedness to support people who are stuck in themselves and their thinking to break through towards their biggest ideas and their self in a casual setting like a walk or a phone call. If you're inspired by what we're doing here, you can support How to Be Second at howtobesecond.com/support. Thanks again. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.